Welcome to the Dogs Are the Best Friends podcast. I'm Emily, and my best buddy, Flynn, is here too.
Hey, my crazy for the canines friends. How are you today? I hope you are doing well, and I also hope that you're ready for some dog stories, because here we go. Today's stories come from Kent of Goosemasters. Kent has worked with his dogs since the age of 2. I am not exaggerating. His father put him to work at age 2, and you will hear about that. Most of the stories are about Border Collies, but he has had many other breeds in his life as well. At the end of the episode, I will share about the 3 most downloaded shows so far. So if you're wondering what those are, stay till the end. By the way, I wasn't just trying to train you to stay. It just kind of came out that way, didn't it? Here's the trivia question for today. Which Queen of England was a huge dog lover and eventually became a massive fan of the Border Collie? I'll have the answer later. Ken, if you could just share with us about I know you have a bunch of dogs, but if you could share some dogs and maybe one from the past if you want, and one that you have currently that you just love working with.
Well, I'll start with the first dog that I acquired, and my dad gave her to me. And I had worked with a lot of puppies leading up to her, but she was my actual first dog that was mine to keep. And so I was 12 years old, and her name was Pepper. And she was, she grew up with me from a 6-week-old puppy on. And so she stayed in my bedroom right next to me all the time. And we moved around a lot. So she was actually my best friend because, literally because we moved around so much. She was the only one that kept with me. So anyway, I started training her, and my dad was a salesman. So he'd come home on weekends and he would tell me what to do next so I would work on just that thing all week. He'd come home the next weekend and be like, okay, well, you didn't do this right. You need to keep working on this because you didn't finish it. So then it would motivate me to get this exactly right before he'd come home. And so we went through the whole training process, and she was so well trained. And I was 12, 13 years old. I started competing in sheepdog trials at that age,
Nice.
and I won a couple of novice awards with her. And none of the other young kids could touch me with her because, my stock background that I acquired at that time, the next place we lived after Ohio was on a farm that they had 40,000 grazing acres. They had 2,000 head of sheep, and they had over 1,000 head of cows, and they grazed 40,000 acres, and plus they had grazing rights on another 20,000 acres from the government. And so I would use this dog and work these huge flocks and help get them into lamb and work them through the chutes.
Wow.
And so I gained so much experience and stock knowledge and why the dogs did what they did, how they reacted to the stock. I would ride on back of a pickup, and we'd gather 1,000 at a time, and we'd go down these mountain roads, and it was in the mountains of the Clinch Mountains in southwestern Virginia, where Tennessee and Virginia meet down in there. West Virginia, it was right down in there. And so I would ride the back of the truck, and the dog would just gather these huge flocks and bring them. And I could just watch the instinct of the dog, work them on their own. And it was just an unbelievable, at the time it was work and I enjoyed it, but I didn't realize how much it was going to influence the way that I developed my training methods and how much it would benefit me later competing in sheepdog trials as an adult.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you started young with Border Collies,
very young.
How did your dad know that was a great breed for you? Was he already into Border Collies himself, or what was his background a little bit?
Right. Well, he was a shepherd, and he got his first Border Collie in the late 50s. So he started training them then. And so I was born in 60.
Okay.
And so as I grew up, was on a farm, it was on an estate in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So, and it was a 500-acre estate, and they had purebred Cheviot sheep, and my dad was the shepherd there. So my job, I was 2 when we moved there, and we moved away from there when I was gosh, it was 10 years later. So I was like 11 or so when we moved from there. And so my job there was to socialize the puppies.
Oh,
So I grew up, and so I would ride these litters of puppies around in a little red wagon. And that was my job, pulling them around in a wagon. My son did the same thing, and my daughter did the same thing
oh my gosh.
as they grew up, later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the pup. I
So
always liked
interesting.
the dogs. It was that puppy breath, I think, that
Yeah, right. The addictive.
the best
It's
thing, right, in
so
life was the
cute.
puppy breath.
And puppies are
Right.
so fluffy.
Yeah.
So fluffy.
And the thing about the breed is they listen to you and they want to listen to you. So it's not like you make them listen to you, but you bond with them. And that breed has such a devoted uh, way to be that they're just so fun to work with. And
Yeah,
yeah. So
true.
anyone that hasn't experienced the Border Collie, I highly recommend it if you have an environment that you can give them enough to do to keep
Yeah.
them busy, because they are busy.
Yes,
They're
it's
very
so
busy.
true. And it's not just physical. It's the, like you said, the mental. They need the interaction with us. They crave that. They love that.
They
They live for
absolutely
it.
do.
So, and you
Yes.
know that really well, being in the shepherding. I mean, literally why they were bred and developed the way they've been developed. So that's fascinating. So interesting, your background. And so of course you got into what you're into, and we'll get to that in a few minutes as well. But tell us about one of your current, or one or two of your current ones that you work with a lot.
Well, right now I'm working with a couple. Abby is one of them, and I do a lot of goose control with her, and also work on the farm. So she is quite the character. I mean,
Uh,
she's not only really good to work, very biddable. So she listens really well, even in quick moving with the stock, and at any moment I can just say lie down very calmly, or use the lie down whistle, and
right.
she'll just hit the dirt in whatever chaos that might have been happening, or or
Wow.
something she really wants to do. Like she thinks one is getting away, but I don't want that one. I want the other ones.
Oh,
She'll immediately listen to me, drop that one, and go immediately to
wow.
the task that we're doing. So she's great. And then we
Yeah.
also have a very special pup. And she was born with a birth defect, and it's the first
Mm.
one I've ever had of the hundreds of puppies that we've had in our life, in my dad's life, or anyone else that I know in the Border Collies. She was
Yeah.
born with a cleft palate,
Oh, wow.
which is very unusual. She had
Yeah.
one little hole in the roof of her mouth, and
Mm.
her nose was separated. And
Oh,
but anyway, we had
wow.
a vet friend of ours, who was very talented, and he knows a lot of other vets. He has like a system of veterinary clinics, and so he got together with another one of his surgeons, and he fixed it for us.
Wow.
And the before and the after pictures of her at 6, 8 weeks old is just unbelievable. But she was also very special mentally, I think, and she never had any trouble competing with the other puppies. She was fine that way.
Yeah.
Um, and so we kind of, we had to treat her a little different with her healing process and her rehab. So she lived on the couch basically for quite a while, and so she
Yeah.
developed this personality. And so she's now 9 months old, and we're
Okay.
working her so she's getting her first stock dog training now, and she's very, very talented.
Oh, really? Oh,
And
wow.
so she's very special. She lives here in the house, and a lot of
Yeah.
our very special ones did, but not all of them.
Right.
Um, but it does, the closer you bond with them and have that one-on-one time, the better,
Yeah.
because they even want to please you more when they're working stock.
So
And
true.
so,
Very true.
as I really look forward to seeing her through and everything. She's so special. But she kind of took the place of another special dog that we had in the house, and her name was Mia, but
Uh,
she was a Maltese.
oh,
So
okay.
that doesn't have,
Little.
yeah, doesn't have anything to do with, but the special thing about both of them, that's why I brought her up, was if I go outside, I forget something in the car, and I go out for 60 seconds or 90 seconds or whatever, 2 minutes.
Right.
I come in the house, it's like they haven't seen me in 10 years. And so the both of them share that. So she's kind of replaced that
So
void since Mia passed away. So,
and what's that pup's name too? The one that had the special issue?
Jules.
Jules. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I was just curious. So you're on a farm. So not only are you doing the Goosemasters thing and taking care of geese for people
Right.
that need to go somewhere else, but what's your farm like? I love farms, so I want to hear about that. But what kind of animals and what kind of setup do you have?
Yeah, we have sheep, goats, ducks, and geese.
Okay.
So
And geese,
so
ironically.
yeah. So the reason for the goats is they're a little calmer. Believe it or not, they're very forgiving animals.
Oh, okay.
So let's say I have a young dog and he runs a little close to them, and I like to use goats in the beginning of the training because of that reason. And so as soon as that dog starts working properly and not so close, they forgive them and they calm down. So the dog gets that reward for proper work. And that's why we have the goats. So then we progress them to sheep.
Okay.
So, and the sheep run a little faster, so they get a little bit more experience and they broaden. And so then we have the ducks that we introduce them to. And because they're a lot like geese.
Okay.
But they're a little better to work for geese because they move a little slower than geese.
Oh, true.
So they can learn how to work the waterfowl and in the water also. And so then we have domestic geese, and they don't tend to like water as much as the ducks do. So they're not as good as the water training to progress them to the Goosemasters work. So then we have the geese, and they mimic the Canada geese.
Okay.
So, they get more on them. So when we take them out in the real Canada geese work, they're quickly to get on the geese, because before we did that, we had trouble getting them on the Canada birds sometimes.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow. So there's a lot of steps involved in getting a dog ready to do this job.
Yeah, because when you take the dog out in the public to do this work, you want them to be spot on and get it done quickly and efficiently so we can get through our day and all of our customers can get our service. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had no idea that there are that many levels of training. I mean, I knew it'd be a bunch, but I had no idea that it was that many animals that they go through, to learn on. And you're in North Carolina? Did I get that right?
That's correct. We're in Franklinville. Yep. Franklinville, North Carolina, which is central.
Okay. I was trying to picture where that was. Yeah. Tell us some funny, there's got to be some funny things. Geese are, they could be really snotty is really the word that comes to mind. They can be really kind of mean.
Sometimes, like if you get to a property and the geese aren't used to being worked, like it's like their first time that they've had a Border Collie on them, and, they mimic the predator so well because of the way the Border Collie works. They stalk. And so they're very predator-like. And so we send the dog out just like we would at home on sheep or cows or whatever, ducks, geese, and they're trying to gather them to us. That's the wonderful thing about the Border Collies. They want to bring those to us. And so they go around and they get on the birds and they swim and herd. And the important thing is they're herding. They're not chasing. Right. And that's what keeps the birds gone longest. But anyway, they put these birds up that aren't being used to working, and they sort of leave and they do a flyover, and you can see them up there looking down, and they're like, well, what was that? What kind of predator was that? And so I'm standing next to my truck a couple times, right? And I'm getting ready to put the dog back in soon, and they do this flyover, and they bomb my truck and my hat.
No.
So they do that pretty often. So
really?
Well, I've accused them of doing it on purpose, but how can a head that small have that much brains to orchestrate such a mean thing?
Tell us about what you can do for people with getting geese to not be in areas where they shouldn't be.
I touched a little bit on it already as the Border Collie's herding instinct.
Right.
And so they stalk, they don't chase, they don't bark. And so you send them out for the geese, and the geese leave because they believe that there's a predator there and they're going to be caught. And it lasts longer. So if we go at different times of day, the geese start to believe the predators are just hanging out waiting for us. So I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to start eating somewhere else, and I'm not going to cause all this erosion on these properties, because they literally, when someone tries to grow grass in a certain area, like a new seeding, the geese literally wait till it's about an inch long, and then they see it from the sky, and because their vision is like 8 times better than a human's.
Really?
And so they see it, and they can spot strawed grass, and they go, well, it's not quite ready yet. We won't go now. And then they come in when it's ready, and they just ruin it. They come in and they pluck all the grass, so they have to reseed. And we did a property where there was about a 60-acre field above a corporate property, and they had constructed these walking trails with exercise equipment around them, and it was like an exercise path. You've probably seen them.
Yeah.
And they literally could not get grass to grow on the hill, and they would have about 300 geese would land and literally graze the whole hillside. They would graze. The maintenance guy told me he could see right where they quit one day, and then they come back the next day and they'd finish. Or they'd spend the night in the pond, where they had 3 beautiful ponds. And so for years, a couple of years, they tried growing grass. And so, we kept that from happening. And now they have a beautiful field with grass, and now they have to mow it. So.
Yeah, right. No, they have to mow it. I love it.
Right. But
I never thought about that use. I mean, I was just thinking of the danger that they can provide if there's children and, the nesting season, like you said, and everything.
And also the aggressive geese behavior, like someone's walking into their office and all of a sudden they're startled and they fall down, and they have to block off areas where the geese are too aggressive. As our goal, like our company goal, has always been to try to move the birds, to get them to relocate. Year after year, we have relocated a lot of birds.
So how do you move them? Like, how do you encourage them to go somewhere else?
Well, by repeatedly getting them to fly off, they will go and eat somewhere else, and they will lay their nest somewhere else. So that's the key. So if you're enough of a problem, they'll change their habits to living there instead, because that's where they're raising their families. And little by little, you get them to change that habit, and by changing their nesting habit, you change where they hang out. Their instinct is to nest, and their babies will nest where they were born. Okay. So by changing that little by little, you're changing them. It doesn't happen overnight, but by persistence, and that's what the dogs teach us, right, is to be persistent, and that's how it works.
Yeah.
Over time. Yeah. So we help these properties become beautiful and enjoyable, completely environmentally safe and humane, I might add, too.
Right.
And something else I'd like to add, PETA and they endorse the use of Border Collies, and the Humane Society as well.
Yeah.
So, that says a lot for what we do.
That's huge. Absolutely. I hope you enjoyed Kent's stories. And I just love that he is such a huge dog lover. And he has so many more insights and stories, and I will share them with you another time. I just couldn't squeeze them all in this time. So stay tuned. I will bring those out on another episode. So how did you do with the detective sleuthing work from last week's episode? The third most downloaded episode is number 35, How Positivity Has Made All the Difference to Former Scaredy Dog Bentley. Ben and his mom, Amber, they are my neighbors and Flynn's neighbors. And I'm so glad that she finally agreed to share their stories, because they are very special ones. The second most downloaded episode is number 7, titled Sheep Herding with Brilliant Border Collies. Billy shared some great insights and information about the breed and the sport. If you don't know anything about sheep herding, he has some great descriptions on that. By the way, Billy is the former owner of Flynn. That's where I got my boy from. The most downloaded episode so far out of this whole shebang is number 16, Diana Bertoldo's Dogs of Love and Resistance. Diana is an incredibly genuine and warm dog lover with a wonderful personality. So, Diana, you rock, and I'm not surprised that it's one of the most downloaded ones. I hope you'll check those episodes out. And by the way, we have an episode that is quickly climbing, and it might take over. So I'll let you know if that happens. Today's trivia answer is Queen Victoria. She got into the breed in the 1860s, the early 1860s, when they were just starting to be recognized as a separate breed from other collies. Now, I know in England they are called sheepdogs, and I believe in Australia as well. So my apologies for not mentioning that before. So Border Collie, sheepdog, whatever you call them, Queen Victoria was a huge fan. Flynn would like to encourage you to have either some ball or frisbee time if your dog's into that. He just had to mention that. So there you go. Talk to you next week.